Welcome to day two of the CFL free agency special. I'm your host, Emmanuel Point du jour, and today we are going over the Edmonton Elks free agency. And man, oh man, did they have a busy one. Ed Hervey, the GM, was just given the card and said, go out and shop, go out and do some shopping, bring us back some good guys. And did they do that? They got a lot of top 30 names, and we'll get to that in just a second. But let's start with their re-signings. And the biggest re-signing was obviously quarterback Trey Ford. He returns after, there's something. There's something in Trey Ford. He's got that running ability. He'll need to improve his, throwing ability a little bit more, but I think he can be a very solid quarterback in the league. He's a Canadian, which is also great. So we'll see how he does this year. I think there'll be a lot of RPOs this year. I think going to heavily focus on that running game. Speaking about the running game, you have running back Javon Leake also back in 2025. He was strictly a returner in Toronto, and then in Edmonton, about halfway through the season, he became this kind of running back, and then Edmonton did this running back by committee with Leake and then Kevin Brown and Justin Rankin, who's also really good. So they did that by committee. That worked pretty well. So I think they're going to continue that. And then on the offensive line, to run the ball, you need a good offensive line. That's what they did. They brought back Martez Ivy and Brett Boyko on the O line, which will be really good if they want to establish that running game. You also got linebacker Niles Morgan back in the fold, one of the best tacklers in the CFL. That was a huge get for Edmonton to bring him back. I was thinking he might go to a different team, but that Edmonton could get him back. That was huge. Now let's get to their additions, and man, did they have a ton. This is where they went shopping. First, you got quarterback Cody Fajardo via trade with Montreal. They sent out McLeod Bethel Thompson to the Alouettes, got Cody Fajardo, and you get a Grey Cup MVP as your backup. Not too shabby. It's not like a Grey Cup MVP from 5 years ago. It's just from 2023. So whenever you can get Cody on the team as a backup, I think you're in a pretty good position because if Trey struggles or whatever, I think they'll still roll with him. But you also got Cody as a backup that can really win you ball games week in and week out, and that's definitely what Cody Fajardo is going to bring. If anything happens to Trey Ford, let's hope not, but you never know. But you also got a great backup. Then you got a trio of receivers that they brought in Trey Odoms Dukes after a release from Calgary. You got wide receiver Keon Julian Grant. He rejoins Cody Fajardo in Edmonton. And then Steven Dunbar also returns to Edmonton after spending a couple years in Hamilton. So that will be good receiving core. Not as good as I think last year's was, but they lost a lot of names in that receiving core. So it's a kind of a nice bounce back that they got these three guys. And then offensive lineman David Beard, he returns to Edmonton. A lot of guys that are making their homecoming, if you will, to Edmonton. David Beard is one of them. He was in Hamilton last year. On the defensive side of the ball, the biggest defensive name, well, one of the biggest defensive names in this free agent class was defensive lineman Jake Ceresna. He spent 1 year in Toronto and decided to come back to Edmonton, one of the highest paid defensive players there, and well deserved because he gets to the quarterback a ton, gets a lot of sacks, and one of the best defensive players today. So it was great to get him back. And then you got Jared Brinkman also coming from Toronto to Edmonton on that defensive line, and Roby Smith, who just became the highest paid defensive player in the CFL for 2025. Good for him. And that defensive line that we just saw a couple months ago in the Grey Cup transfers over to Edmonton. So that's not a bad signing day when you can sign those three guys on that defensive line. In the backfield now, you got defensive back Tyrell Ford joins his brother in Edmonton, and also I think in the top 5 in the CFL top 30 free agency list. So that's not a bad get. And he makes about 200, I think he's making like $230,000. So he kind of blows up the market for defensive backs. Defensive back Manny Rugamba also signs with the Elks. Kobe Williams from Calgary. And then Royce Metchie from Toronto. So a lot of guys on that Toronto defense decide to go up to Edmonton. And he got punter Cody Grace from Calgary. That's going to be obviously doing the punting duties because I think their punter Jake Julian went down to the NFL, if I'm not mistaken. Now we get to their losses, and obviously got quarterback McLeod Bethel Thompson in that trade for Cody Vajardo. Running back Kevin Brown that got released, and he signed with Toronto. Wide receiver Dylan Mitchell also released and signed with Winnipeg, and this is where you kind of get to the run on receivers here. Wide receiver Eugene Lewis, who signed with Ottawa. I think GM Ed Hervey did not want to pay him that big price tag. And you could see during free agency, he wasn't using the big bucks on wide receiver or on the offense. It was all defense for Hervey. And then Tevin Jones, who joined Calgary after his huge game on Labor Day. He joins or heads down south to the Stampeders. Derek Moncrief, linebacker, he also goes down to Calgary to join the Stamps. Defensive back Luches Purifoy was released after something happened to him. I forget what happened, but something happened which the Elks had to release him. And then kicker Boris Beatty, who also got released. So a lot of guys that were with Chris Jones or the Chris Jones signings from 2 years ago, a year ago, now they're gone.
Bye bye. See you later.
Now it's like we are a new team, a new identity. That's what we're gonna bring in 2025. And did GM Ed Hervey do that or what? Man, oh man. So Elks fans, let me know what you think about your guys' free agency. I thought it was brilliant. I thought, you got a very great defense. Now you got like one of the best defenses in the CFL. We'll have to see how it plays out. That's why we play the games, to really see. You don't win it in free agency. But I would say they would be one of the biggest winners in free agency. So we'll just have to wait and see how this turns out. But I could say that defense should be really improved. And also the offense, it'll be interesting. Will they be more of a running team when CFL is a passing league? So we'll see how Trey Ford improves his passing game. But definitely one of the biggest winners in free agency was the Edmonton Elks. But that will do it for this edition of the Red Zone Podcast, day 2 of the free agency special. Tomorrow, we're going down south to review the Calgary Stampeders free agency, what they did, because they're a little bit more active this year in free agency after only a 5-win year last year. So we're going to talk about them tomorrow. But until then, hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow for the Calgary Stampeders free agency special. Until then, peace.